I do not allow myself to be spoken to that way. That is a boundary. Okay. So a lot of times, you guys have asked me, you're like, okay, well, like what's a boundary, right? Obviously, you know what a boundary is, right? Think of a boundary as like the yellow caution tape around like a crime scene, right? It's a boundary. People will try to overstep it, right? And so that's a big thing, is for you to know that just because you set a boundary, all of a sudden it's not like people are going to be like, oh, darn, it's a boundary. Like nobody's going to do that. People are, and especially if these are new for you, if boundaries are new for you, oh, it's going to be people trying to overstep them. They cannot overstep them as long as you believe in them, right? And this is where the issue lies, is people kind of want those boundaries to be like, okay, I really want the boundaries, but I don't want people to be mad at me. Those two things don't always go hand in hand. So you have to understand a boundary can't be wishy-washy. So going back to that top of the video, how I said, I do not allow myself to be spoken to that way. That's point blank. What a boundary is not is like, I don't like when you speak to me that way. I mean, it's good. That's communication. If you guys are having an actual communication conversation about things that you guys want to change or want to work on, you can say, hey, you know what? I really don't like that. It really bothers me, hurts my feelings. That's fine if you're engaged into a conversation that's going to be a productive one. But if somebody comes in at you, that's not how you approach it. Because the moment you say, I don't like, or I don't want you to, you're kind of still asking them for permission to adhere to how you feel. When you say, I do not allow myself to be spoken to that way, that kind of puts a line in the sand, which is what boundaries are. They're not walls, because walls would be like, you will never hurt me again. People are never going to hurt me again. That's completely done out of anger. That's done out of hurt. You never set boundaries done out of hurt or anger, and you don't do them based on a person. This is where people get it mixed up, right? Because a boundary is going to be consistent across the board, which means if you have a boundary with your mom, you're going to have a boundary with your boss. It's going to be the same thing. And, I know people are like, gosh, but sometimes you're in a situation and, you really kind of have to kind of take some things. Actually, almost like the worst situations that you're in is when you want to hold those boundaries even more. Because what will happen is if people know that you're desperate or in some kind of a way, they're going to try to get the upper hand, right? It's not everybody. I'm not saying all humans do this, but there are people who will do this. And so you have to understand that when you're in that zone, you can't not have boundaries because you're in fear of something, because then you're not holding your own boundaries and you worry about other people overstepping them. But the reality is you're not even establishing them because you're not holding on to them. So that goes into the no is a complete sentence, right? And that's always going to be a thing. No is a complete sentence. And people will say, oh my God, it's rude to not give a follow-up. That's also a negotiation tool, right? So if somebody asks you to come over for coffee and maybe you just don't feel like it, or maybe you want to go for a hike and you're just like, hey, I'm busy or can't make it, whatever. That's fine. That's, hey, do you want to do this? No, thank you. Like, you say no, thank you, for sure. You don't have to be rude about it, but you do not have to follow up the reasoning, because now you're giving somebody a negotiation tool. So let's say you really don't want to go over to somebody's house to help them paint, because why would you, right? So, but we do things that we often don't want to do, but on our terms, right? However, if you go, no, I can't because I go hiking from 9 to 12, they're going to try to work around your schedule. It gives them a negotiation tool. Now, the reverse is also true. So everything that I'm telling you about the boundaries in which you set for yourself, you must respect them from other people. Okay? Everything's going to be yin and yang, 50-50. It's not going to be all about you and then you just assume that everybody else is going to bow down to you. Not a thing. So if somebody else has boundaries that may be different than your boundaries, doesn't make them wrong. And it, yes, you have made your presence known. Oh, yes, you've made your presence known. Let everybody see you. I swear he knows when I'm recording. So you have to understand that you are in control of your boundaries, right? Like, you have to know what feels good for you, but you must also respect somebody else's boundaries, even if you don't like them. You don't need their why. If you're like, well, but why would they do that? Well, why? Okay, stay in your lane. All right. The same way that you are protecting your peace, you must respect that somebody else might have a totally different peace than you. So what's good for you is also good for them. So always remember it's going to be an equal measure. So anything that I say to you guys also pertains to you about someone else. And that's where sometimes you have issues because you want to know why somebody isn't coming or why somebody did something a certain way. And oh my gosh, stay in your own stuff, because the more time that you spend on you, the less time you have to worry about other people's why. And you don't have to worry about avoiding things or being alert on things, because when you have full self-love, self-peace, and that in turn will breed self-confidence, you're not going to be worrying about other people's whys. So that's why it's very, very relevant that you stick to whatever boundary that you're having and stop worrying about how somebody else is going to receive it, because they might receive it rude. They might say you're rude. They might say you're self-absorbed. Whatever the case may be, that's for them to process, because remember, it's never your responsibility for somebody else's feelings, and vice versa. They're not responsible for your feelings either. So if your feelings get hurt and then they say something to you like, I'm sorry you feel that way, and then you take offense to it because they're not apologizing, I'm not going to apologize for something I did incorrectly. I mean, didn't do incorrectly, but you think I did incorrectly, right? I'm not going to apologize for something I didn't do wrong, or that I feel that I didn't do wrong. I might say, hey, listen, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, but I'm going to hold true to what I say. And vice versa. That also has to be able to be received from you. So one of your boundaries is for you to work on this week is also respecting other people's boundaries. We know sometimes you're going to struggle with setting yours, and that's going to be with self-help and self-development, but it's respecting other people's boundaries without asking why. So if you ask yourself 800 times a week, why, this is where you're going to want to really pay attention to how you're overstepping somebody else's boundaries, even if they're not saying this is a boundary. You don't have to announce your boundaries. You don't have to skywrite it, right? So that's kind of your homework, right? Is yes, know what your boundaries are, be firm in them, support them, hold them, hang on to them, but also respect other people's boundaries, even if you don't know why they have them. That's actually okay. And that's a huge part of self-development, is respecting where somebody else is, even if you don't agree with it. You don't have to rock with them, but you do have to respect it and not ask why.